Hello there everybody and welcome to a new video for Age of Wonders 4, and today I got a new Necromancer build for you because we all love Necromancer builds. It is one that works with the Industrious Culture and I am quite happy with how it turned out. I'm playing this with a Dragon Ruler, but in all honesty it would work with a Sorcerer King Ruler as well. I'd recommend the Sorcerer Ruler because it's always nice to have extra spellcasting abilities. As usual, we will go over the racial, cultural traits, the tomes, the military, and the strategy over the course of the video. Timestamps are down below. Let's get started. So, culture-wise, I went for runesmiths in combination with Scions of Evil. So, runesmiths, I don't think I need to say much about that one. We want unit enchantments, this makes them more accessible and cheaper, and runesmiths just stays one of the best enchantments in that department. So, on the other end, I use Scions of Evil. So, I think this is an interchangeable one. I personally like this one because it gives you access to more Imperium, and nowadays I personally value Imperium quite a lot. So this one turned out pretty decently, but you could play whatever fits your game plan well. I can totally see a trait that reduces the spell costs pretty good here as well. So, body and mind traits, I went for Nightmare Mounts. Feel free to change that. I personally just love the Industrious in combination with Nightmare Mounts because your battle strategy lasts a few combat turns longer than the average fight, and that's where Intimidating Aura and Vicious Killer can come in super handy. But feel free to exchange that to something of your own liking. For this build, I found it highly synergistic nevertheless. Ferocious, well, I think this is one of the go-to traits for the Industrious Culture, because retaliating and opportunity attacks, you just do so many of these. So I found that highly helpful with this build. Okay, so that's these parts. Nothing too special here, in all honesty. We can just go on over to the tomes. So we got, to begin with, like all my Necromancer builds, I start out with Tome of Souls. It gives you access to the Bone Golem, which is probably the most important unit in this entire book. It also gives you access to Soulfire, which is a handy nuke, which I really like to use, and Soulbinders is really good because our build is quite support unit heavy. So we can use that really decently because it's a 10% damage increase after all, and if you get yourself some battle mages into your roster in one way or another, they're not really native until the tier 3 tomes. They are really well in this build as well. I just want to point that out. The other tier 1 tome I picked up was the Tome of Warding. There's several good reasons for that. The first and foremost reason is Staves of Warding. It gives you supporters the ability to add 2 stacks of bolstered resistance. And bolstered resistance, everything which includes the word bolstered, is highly valuable for the Industrious Culture. And since your units are really good at soaking up physical damage, but not so good at soaking up magical damage, this book is a real godsend. You will make good use of most things in here. Static Shield goes really well on your taunting unit. Mark of Invulnerability can sometimes just save a lost unit. I really like that one because sometimes you can just navigate a goner out for good. I really like that one. And Magical Wards is just so good in general. I mean, it is not super much, but for example, against the Mystic Culture, this one counters their Starblades already pretty massively. And the Phantasm Warrior, well, don't worry too much about the Phantasm Warrior. He's not really a major sales point for you in this book. If you have supporting heroes, pick up bolstering support for them as well. I think it's really powerful for them. So, Tier 2, no big surprise, we go over directly into the Tome of Necromancy. The Necromancer, Raised Zombies, and Rotting Explosion are an unholy trio of destruction. So the Necromancer, I personally love to pick these up as early as possible. 2 reasons. First off, they give me the ability to raise my own undead units, and they give me the ability to strengthen my own units, which is massive. They also feature a pretty nice blast, because they are tier 3 units, their base damage is pretty high. I like that. Raised Zombies gives you the ability to do the same thing as the Necromancer does, as often as you can cast it. Just one thing about the Necromancer, the Raise Undead thing is a once per battle thing, so use it wisely. And Rotting Explosion can turn your zombies into 30 points of AoE damage, 2 hex radius, and applies decay. It is insane how powerful this spell can be. You can even sometimes let the zombie first attack and then explode him, so this is one of my favorite spells out of this book. But we cannot underestimate Restore Undead either. If you have early game a lot of undead units in one banner, it's already useful. Later down the road, everybody will be undead, so this book will be just massive for you. The spell, sorry. And Necrotic Magic, yeah, is another power-up for our supporters and battle mages. Decaying is a really, really nasty thing. It deals a lot of damage, and it denies enemy HP regain. So the moment you are on tier 2, you basically shut down most healer builds with these tools if you apply them wisely. The Corrupt Soul is a real nice fighter. Tier 3, you can summon it directly to the front of the battle line, and it's a morale destroyer, so it fits very well to your nightmares, and it can one-shot low morale units, so pretty high synergy with your own stuff, and you can summon it when you need to refill your units. I love that one for this pot. Unholy Leader is really good. 10% more damage for your undead units. And Soulwell is your constant income of souls, but you don't need to worry too much about that anymore nowadays. Okay, so the other tier 2 tome I picked up was Artificing. So since this is, after all, a Materium build, I picked up this one out of several reasons. Artisan Armaments is a very, very valuable power-up for your bigger combat plan, because you might have already noticed we have practically no steroids for the damage in this build, but it still works due to stuff like Artisan Armaments. I'm going to explain why it also works later down the road. Siege magic is 10% more damage for your battle mages and supporters, and by this point you might have already noticed that the supporters are your hidden superstars in your roster. They actually can do a lot of damage. So the Iron Golem is an interesting frontliner. If you happen to need a dude that's immune to statuses, he's pretty handy, but most of the time your bastions will just do a better job at that. But they are available in cities that have no tier 3 town hall, and they are tier 3 shield units that can just soak up so freaking much damage that they can be very, very useful at times. Artisan Fortification just makes your cities more tanky, not bad for the industrials who can really stack up that stuff. And Bolt Repeaters gives you a siege project, which gives you really, really nice units that have a lot of damage for you. So Golem Mine is really nice because it acts as a mine, it gives you a defender, and it gives you a little bit more out of your quarries. And Golem Assisted, I love this little support skill because it is another throwaway unit that you can't just use to distract the enemy with. Good stuff. So when we hit tier 3, well, we go for the Great Transformation directly, because Whiteborn is the skill that basically finishes your build. The moment you got this, all of your units gain lifesteal, and that is the game changer. All of a sudden, it doesn't matter too much anymore that your damage is subpar, because you life leech, you have all of the perks of the Industrious Culture, you have critical hits, you drain the enemy morale. All in all, it's super easy to just last out the enemy with this build. Outlast, I'm sorry. And the Fetid Legion spell here is another fix into this direction. It gives you the Weakening Aura, which is massive. It just helps you so much, because that means the enemy gets even weaker. You are already stupidly high armored, you life leech, and then you weaken the enemy on top of that. I love it. The other spells in here are, well, okay, but no big highlights. Desecrate Structure gives you even more mana income, which is cool, because that enables you to have huge summoned armies, and Domain of Death gives you high city stability income, and friendly undead units a bonus. But the city stability income here is the real major sales point. Necrotic Spires is also quite nice. It gives you temporary HP heal for your undead. It's basically the counterpart of the Holy One. I rarely get attacked in my own domain later in this, but in the later stages of the game for a magic victory, I can see this being really, really useful. And apart from that, there's nothing much in here that we need to talk about anymore. So, transmutation, the third tier 3 tome we pick up. I love this one because it finishes, or it adds some finishing touches. You get Melt Armor, which is a really, really good nuke for your build. It sunders the enemy defense, which enables you to deal more damage on the side. Adaptive Armor gives you more bolstered resistance stacks, which is really, really cool because this is something your culture can utilize damn well. More about that in the military part. And Steel Skin, yeah, please, more of that. I mean, we already have a lot of blight resistance due to the White Worn, you know? Undead units already get extra blight resistance, so you're really massively resistant against blight with that build. And the Transmuter. The real major powerhouse in stunning. You know, 1 hex radius stun, and you also get a attack that gives your units defense up and the enemy defense down. The only downside about these guys is that they are tier 4 and therefore they want Imperium upkeep, but that's really the only thing. And transmute resources can also be really nice because, as you see here, I'm swimming in resources, and this would power up your cities quite nicely. Okay, when you get to the part where tier 4 is available, as you see here, we are affinity-wise able to dip into Necromancer, Shadow, and Materium. And if you want a Materium tome, I'd highly recommend Golden Realm, because you have the Gold Golem, which is just a stupidly powerful unit that can just, you know, outright kill gilded units, and it's just such a powerful unit. Gilding Blast gives you the ability to prepare units to be gilded, and gilded is just a fancy word for gold-coated stuns. If you kill a gilded unit, you get extra gold. Luxury Markets, well, it synergizes damn well into any Materium build, and Reagent Refinery, if you haven't had enough gold by that point, you should have. And Gold Touched, another nice fancy thing, it gives you magic resistance again, very, very powerful for your own culture. And yeah, Gilded Magic is really cool for your heroes as well because it gives critical hits the chance to stun. Don't sleep on that, it's massively powerful. And Bazaar of Wonders, well, yeah, it's just another gold upper. So with this build, you will be able to just print armies like you want to because you just have too much gold. And the other tier 4 tome you could opt into, or I'd highly recommend you to, is the Tome of the Reaper, giving you another tier 5 unit. So yeah, 2 different tier 5 units with this build, and giving you access to Marked for Death, which will just kill enemies after a couple of turns. Again, here comes the ability to outlast the enemy in super handy. You can't just wait until they die with this spell. And Greater Reanimation is a nice little resurrection spell. Yes, the unit will surely die at the end of the battle, but you can resurrect whatever you want to, and therefore super powerful. Harvest Population and Construct Soul Siphons are another tools for soul income, but I don't see the big, massive need of these. Greater Corpse Consumption is really good for melee champions, so don't sleep on that. I mean, it's stupidly much healing, and it's a strength bonus on top of that. And I always feel like for very melee oriented heroes, this can be really, really great. And last but not least, we should always opt into Tome of the Eternal Lord, because this is a book just made for necromancers. You have a battlefield disable slash damage spell, you have the ability to get even more undead units on the map, and you have Death Magic, which marks the enemy for death via supporters, and Battlefield Reanimation is just, yeah, undead units get reanimated, and since your entire army is by that point undead, this is just stupidly good. So, that's the tomes. military strategies, the next point. So when you go like me for a dragon, you end up with the ability to act on two fronts. Your dragon ruler can be his own army on his own, and you have the other army doing its thing on the other side. On the early game, you will be relying a lot on the combo of bone golems, arbalists, and anvil guards. You should try to have as few as possible of the anvil guards because they will get just replaced after a while. If you can, just fetch a halberdier instead of an anvil guard, and if you have access to, grab a bastion instead of an anvil guard. So these guys are just fillers, so don't feel bad about disbanding them when you don't need them anymore. The Arbalists are the same. They are basically just placeholders for the Steel Shapers, which are the real ranged units for your build. You won't be needing the Arbalists too much with that one. It's much more viable to have a good backline of Steel Shapers. The trick here with the Steel Shapers is quite simple. Grant defense usually only gives 2 bolts to defense. Due to the tomes we picked, it gives also 2 stacks of resistance on top of that. And strength from steel transforms every stack from bolstered defense and resistance into 8 HP and strengthening. So, quickly summarized, with the setup we got, you just need one Steel Shaper to smack up Grand Defense, and the other one needs to cast Strength from Steel. You got 32 HP heal, 4 stacks of Strengthened by just 2 supporters. Your ability to burst heal with this build is insane. You can do so much heavy lifting with that. As soon as you have access to the 2 tier 1 tomes, your army is already pretty capable. The bone golems are meant to break up the enemy's retaliation attacks, so charge in with the bone golem and then follow up with the other guys without being retaliated. The bone golems will survive by using their consume corpse skill, and you have also access to the bolstering chance spell here, which is a 20 HP direct heal, which also adds bolstered defense. It's also important to note out that over the course of the battles, Steel Fury Chant, when you are in those big battles, it is one spell that transforms all of the bolstered stacks into power-ups. It's worth using this from time to time because your units will end up racking up these stacks quite a lot, and this way you can just power up your army directly with that. As soon as you can, necromancers are a must-have. These guys can only strengthen undead, but the moment you have these, you have also the ability to power up your undead. As soon as you have tier 3 tome and the Whiteborn thing able, these guys can just power up all of your units. Really good point. The really interesting thing here about the combo of Necromancers and Steel Shapers is your build has a decent range damage. It's higher than I actually anticipated it to be, and you are really good at the point when it comes down to just heal up whatever is in front and needs some healing. This build thrives enormously well around any form of summons, so battlefield summons I mean. We don't have any battlefield summons in our standard repertoire, except for race zombies. While race zombies is amazing, it is a little bit finicky to apply, because you need first somebody to die for that spell to be set off, and this is maybe one of your hardest parts. So my army here is concocted like that. We have 3 supporters and 2 shields and a hero here. We have here again 2 supporters and a mixed bag. This was once a bone golem one fight ago. A halberdier and another hero. And as you see here, another supporter, and it looks quite similar. This arbalest is these guys are leftovers from the beginning phase. So all in all, it pays off to have something between 33% to 50% of your army as supporters, mixed Steel Shapers and Necromancers, and the rest. It's really important that you got yourself enough Bone Golems, because these are your major damage dealers early on, and they stay relevant throughout the entire game due to their ability to breach the enemy's defenses and to burst quite decently. So you will rely on all these units quite heavily. The only things you will not rely on too much are the anvil guards, the obelisks, and the skeletons, because your halberdier is just such a massively better polearm unit. You won't need skeletons here at all. Don't waste your resources on these. If you ever happen to have skeletons left over, just collect them and create new bone golems out of them. Much better use for this build than regular skeletons. So that's pretty much what sums it up. You are not the fastest killer with this build, but you are highly resilient. Let's head on over to the strategy pod. So when you're starting out, your dragon ruler can do a lot of heavy lifting. If you're not playing with dragons here, you will be able to do the clean sweep around you pretty easily because you can heal yourself right from the beginning. The bolstering chance spell is really important for your early game, and you really can do a lot of your work with that one. Try to get yourself a second city as fast as possible. That's really important to get that, and since you are playing Science of Evil, or I am with this build, it really pays off to go for a rampage on your local free city right next door. You can pillage them for evilness stacks, you can conquer them to just have another city, but whatever you do, try to be expansionistic with this build. You can afford to. Your units are dirty cheap to create. On the beginning, you're just relying mostly on these bone golems, and they are really cheap. Okay, they cost you mana, but they are running on low maintenance, and therefore, for a magic unit, they are pretty cheap. And with that, you can just take over the world from that point on. When it comes down to combat, it's really important that you hunker down and outlast the enemy, like I said. So don't rush up front into the enemy. The key to your success is to have the enemy constantly clashing with your front line, keep that front line alive. As soon as the enemy starts dying, start resurrecting zombies from the fallen, and then use these zombies either to harass the enemy, lure out their retaliation attacks with that, or just let them explode with the rotting explosion for massive AoE. Rinse and repeat. It's really important that you rely on your frontliners as much as you can, so keep these guys alive. They are like the most important part of your army. And strategy-wise, as soon as you have activated Whiteborn, you're totally taking off. Lifesteal enables this build anyway. It's hard to put into words how stupidly powerful this build grows once it has lifesteal, because before lifesteal you will have to work a lot around keeping your people alive, and you might even lose a unit here and there where you don't want to lose it. But once you have the life leech available, it's so easy to keep your units alive all of a sudden. And on top of that, you will be able to just keep your stuff or keep your actions somewhere else. Like you can nuke enemies more if you don't have to heal your units that much anymore. I want to point out as a last thing here, hero skills wise, I am a really big fan of stop it, you of picking up as many supportive skills as possible. And while summons are really good, the support skills here I picked up a lot were Golem Assistant, because it's really useful. Bolstering support is really good if you are into that. And Unholy Healer is really Unholy Leader, of course, not Healer. These are really good. And last but not least, as soon as I find that hero, here. This spell is also, Mass Rejuvenation is amazing for this build. Basically everything which gives you the ability to AoE heal is really good, so you might even grab yourself some foreign supporters from the Rally of the Liege, because supporters are one of the major backbones of your army. And I want to emphasize it again, if you can get your hands on battle mages, pick them up. They're really good. This build just didn't have any slots for any battle mages to pick up in a reasonable way, therefore I didn't. So that's where it's at. But it's A slow build. I can't deny that combat is going a little bit slow. It's not really good at auto-resolving, but better than most Industrious builds, actually. Not, it has a very, very low rate of unit losses, but combat is slow. That's what you're booking yourself into when you're playing Industrious. But what I really liked about that one, you have a stupidly high amount of control about who's going to die on the battlefield on your side, when they're going to die. You can handle risk and pressure so good with this build that you get a lot of payoff for your patience. So I hope you enjoyed that one. And of course, as with all builds of the Imperium and Materium, you know, it's pretty warm out here, so forgive me. As with all the Materium empires, use your scouts to prospect those provinces. Do it as soon as possible, as much as possible, because it's just that good. Alright, so I hope that was helpful and fun. I personally enjoyed playing a Industrious Necromancer approach a lot, and it's really amazing to grind down the enemy like that. Pretty satisfying experience, not gonna lie. So, I hope you guys gonna enjoy as well. Feel free to leave me your comments, let me know what kind of builds you'd like to see too. And of course, a thumbs up or a subscription would be deeply appreciated. Check out the playlist link down there leading to all the Age of Wonders 4 info videos I did, and I hope that you're having a wonderful day.